From the Blue Eyes White Dragon to Stardust Dragon to Firewall Dragon to Seto Kaiba's ancestor's girlfriend Kisara, who is also the Blue Eyes White Dragon, and beyond, dragons are one of the most important monster types in Yu-Gi-Oh! They're actually so popular that many dragons aren't even technically dragons, yet still retain their dragonic identity and name. And many of these not dragons happen to be dark attribute fusion monsters. And at number 10, for our first undragon dark fusion, we have DDD Dragonbane King Beowulf. This is a level 8 fiend that can be summoned by fusing one triple D monster and one double D monster, and has the effect of giving all of your double and triple D monsters piercing damage. Additionally, during your standby phase, you can destroy all cards in the spell trap card zones. The 3 Ds in King Beowulf's name stand for Different Dimension Daemon, and refer to his status as a fusion monster summoned from the extra deck. This archetype of monsters was used by Declan Akaba in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V, which followed a multi-dimensional story in which each method for summoning from the extra deck had its own home world, where its use was dominant. Declan Akaba, the CEO of the wealthy and powerful Leo Corporation, came from the standard dimension, where all extra deck summoning methods were possible, and had mastered all of them, until the day Yuya Sakaki invented pendulum summoning. Declan's summoning mastery is illustrated by how his different dimension demons are often named after ancient rulers and powerful figures from the history and myths of our world. Beowulf is the titular character of an Old English epic poem about a hero who slays a monster, becomes a king, and fights a dragon. Like its namesake, DDD Dragonbane King Beowulf is pretty strong, and it's easy to see how its piercing effect can support your board, but since its second effect clears your own back row too, it might seem like a double-edged sword. However, many Triple D archetype continuous dark contract spells and traps carry a maintenance fee of 1,000 life points that you must pay during each of your standby phases. Triple D players will often sign several of these cards to pull off their extra deck summons, like using Dark Contract with the Gate to search out, Dark Contract with the Swamp King to fuse into DDD Dragonbane King Beowulf. Those contract costs stack up and can be lethal, but DDD Dragonbane King Beowulf can save you in a pinch by shredding all those pesky contracts during the standby phase before payment comes due. It saw some play as a one-of in TCG for a few months after its release at the start of 2017, even landing a top 32 spot in the 2017 Nationals in Turkey. But it was never more than a niche piece to make your already scary monsters even scarier with some defensive utility thrown in. But in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, DDD Dragonbane King Beowulf saw large amounts of play following the release of Declan Akaba and his skill Command of the Doom King, which allowed you to place a DD monster into the Pendulum Zone from your deck. But despite its menacing board presence, DDD Dragonbane King Beowulf only comes in at number 10 on this list because although it does have dragon in its name, that refers to the dragon that the Beowulf of Germanic legend slew. And spoiler alert for a story over a millennia old, the dragon kills Beowulf too, so 10 it is. Firing all cylinders at number 9, we have Gatling Dragon, a fusion of level 7 Dark Machine Barrel Dragon and level 6 Dark Machine Blowback Dragon. With only 2600 attack and 1200 defense, at first glance, Gatling Dragon might appear weaker than Barrel Dragon, one of its materials, which has the same attack and 1000 more defense. But looks can be deceiving, and Gatling Dragon packs a lot of power. Or maybe not so deceiving since this monster looks like a giant mounted machine gun. Gatling Dragon's effect can be activated once per turn by flipping 3 coins. The turn player must then destroy monsters on the field equal to the number of heads. The potential for this card to destroy 3 of your opponent's monsters before the battle phase when it released in early 2005 established this monster as a force to reckon with, a force just as dangerous to its owner. However, as if you flipped more heads than your opponent had monsters, the destruction would blow back onto your field, perhaps even causing Gatling Dragon to destroy itself. The riskiness of using Gatling Dragon reflects the audacity of Bandit Keith, a character from the original anime who was a former Duel Monsters national champion in America, whose ace monster was Gatling Dragon's fusion material, Barrel Dragon. Prior to Merrick Ishtar destroying his mind, Bandit Keith had no qualms about cheating to ensure victory, going as far as hiding extra cards down his sleeves and even stealing Joey Wheeler's Glory of the King's Hand card, which entitled his opponent to duel Keith in the Duelist Kingdom semi-finals. Gatling Dragon saw play in the TCG as a mostly unimportant extra deck filler. Fittingly, players could take a huge gamble and cheat Gatling Dragon out of the extra deck at the cost of 5,000 life points before Cyberstein was banned in September of 2006. But this remained a tech for only the most desperate duelists, as Gatling Dragon could just as easily destroy nothing at the cost of most of your life points, or even itself. At number 8, we have Cyberdark End Dragon, a level 12 machine with 5,000 attack and 3,800 defense, that can either be fusion summoned using Cyberdark Dragon and Cyber End Dragon, or special summoned from the extra deck by tributing one level 10 or lower Cyberdark fusion monster that is equipped with Cyber End Dragon. This card has the strong protection of being completely unaffected by your opponent's card effects, And it can also equip itself with a monster from either graveyard once per turn and can attack a number of times equal to the number of cards it is equipped. Overall, Cyberdark End Dragon is a strong game finisher capable of attacking multiple times and unconcerned with whatever defenses your opponent has set up. Or at least it seems that way. Although its protection is strong, it is vulnerable to being removed as cost. One copy of Game Seal, the Sea Turtle Kaiju, Lava Golem, or Super Polymerization is enough to neutralize it, and its lack of a floating effect makes it a risky investment to commit to the field. But the entire Cyberdark archetype is built around risky plays, not just in strategy, but narratively. The main gimmick of Cyberdarks is that the machine monsters parasitically gain power from the monsters they plug into, a process that is canonically painful for the dual monster spirits. This thematic sacrifice for power is illustrated in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, where the Cyberdark deck is literally dangerous to use, feeding on a duelist's unbridled ambition and causing serious heart problems and other potentially lethal side effects. Following his demise in a different dimension and subsequent rebirth, Zane Truesdale made use of the Cyberdark strategy in the underground dueling scene, where electric shocks were delivered to duelists when they would take battle damage. Although Zane never truly mastered the Cyberdark deck, his younger brother Cyrus did manage to attain equilibrium while using the monsters by respecting their power without coveting more, insinuating that ambition, like the Cyberdark monsters, is not inherently bad, and can be beneficial when held in check. The card art for Cyberdark End Dragon depicts Cyberdark Dragon enveloping Cyber End Dragon, a move used by Zane Truesdale in the anime against his brother. Interestingly, this technique wasn't initially possible in the TCG, because the OG Cyberdark Dragon can only equip itself with dragon monsters, and Cyber End Dragon is a machine. To address this, Cyberdark End Dragon released alongside support cards to help you equip Cyberdark Dragon with Cyberdark End Dragon, but not enough to land Cyber End Dragon with any competitive placements in the TCG scene, and not enough to land a higher spot on this list. Taking the number 7 spot on this list, we have Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon. This worm fusion belongs to the branded archetype and requires Fallen of Albaz and 1 fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link monster as materials. Once per turn, Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon lets you banish 1 monster on the field without targeting as a quick effect at the cost of sending 1 fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz from your extra deck to graveyard, which can actually be quite beneficial for setting up further branded fusion plays, or for bestials and other strategies that rely on the graveyard. You can only control 1 Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon, and if you use its banishing effect, you won't be able to use it during the subsequent turn, but Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon still has protection. During the end phase of the turn, your opponent causes it to leave the field. Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon destroys all opposing monsters. This saw competitive play immediately after its release in the TCG in April 2022's Albaz Strike Structure deck, and in Master Duel's September 2022 selection pack, the Newborn Dragon. Part of what makes Branded so strong is how well it meshes with other powerful strategies like Tearlaments and Predaplants, plus in more direct synergies with related archetypes like Despia and Bestial. There's no mistaking that Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon is a very good, very strong card, but it still lands in the lower half of this list because even though it's not a dragon, it is a worm, and the narrative line separating these two categories is sometimes indistinct. For number 6, we have yet another structure deck cover card, Grapha, Dragon Overlord of the Dark World, a level 10 fiend with 3200 attack and 2300 defense that was released as a TCG exclusive near the end of the 2022 in the Dark World deck. Dark Worlds are an archetype of dark fiend monsters, spells, and traps that gain advantage when they're discarded by card effect. This can sometimes be confusing to new players because in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's an important distinction between discarding by effect and discarding for cost. Snow, Unlight of Dark World for example, can search out any Dark World card from your deck when it's discarded as the primary effect of a card, like card destruction or Dark World dealings, but won't activate if it's discarded as a cost in order to activate an effect, like with Lightning Vortex and Raigeki Break. And if your opponent's effect is causing you to discard, Snow, Unlight of Dark World lets you special summon a monster from your opponent's graveyard. While it's technically a good thing for Dark Worlds to counter discarding by effect, it's not a great thing, because cards that make you discard by effect are relatively rare, and many of Dark World's strongest effects only activate in response to your opponent forcing you to discard. That's where Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World, comes in as a strong consistency booster to the Dark World strategy. Not only is it relatively easy to summon, requiring only Grapha, Dragon Lord of Dark World, and any generic dark monster, but it also has a very strong quick effect that allows you to respond to your opponent's effect on the field, changing that effect into one to make you discard a card. This prevents an opponent's desired effect from going off and allows you to access your more powerful Dark World discard effects. And to top all that off, when an opponent causes Grapha to leave the field, you can float into Grapha, Dragon Lord of the Dark World and make both players discard a card. In order to be good, Dark World cards need very strong effects to make up for how hard they can be to pull off. Grapha, Dragon Overlord of the Dark World has a very strong effect, enough to land a few spots in Rogue, Danger/Dark World strategies in early 2023. It also functions as a niche tech in some Tier Laments decks, making use of King of the Swamp and Tier's Dark attributes to find a situational spot on the field. Swooping in at number 5, we have Darkblade the Dragon Knight. This level 6 warrior with 2200 attack and 1500 defense is a retrain of both Darkblade, a level 4 vanilla Dark Warrior, and Pitch Dark Dragon, a level 3 Dark Dragon. While already outclassed as a level 4 beats deck by Gemini Elf when it was released in October 2003, with 1800 attack and 1500 defense, Darkblade was a pretty solid choice for your normal summon at the time. And it could get even more powerful with Pitch Dark Dragon on the board too, because you could Pitch Dark Dragon's effect allowed it to become a spell card equipped to Dark Blade, increasing the warrior's attack by 400 points, and granting the ability to inflict piercing damage as well as a rudimentary form of protection against destruction. Like all Union monsters, this combination of cards had the drawbacks of being very slow and prone to easy removal, since as an equip card, Pitch Dark Dragon became vulnerable to mainstays like Mystical Space Typhoon and Heavy Storm. Darkblade the Dragon Knight addressed these drawbacks by preserving Pitch Dark Dragon's attack boost, having the number of summons required to bring this monster combination to the board, and removing its vulnerability to back row removal. Darkblade the Dragon Knight allows the player to banish up to 3 monsters from your opponent's graveyard when it inflicts battle damage but loses the piercing factor it carried in its Union version. For a very brief amount of time after its release, Darkblade the Dragon Knight saw a high amount of competitive play in the TCG as it was tied with Darkflare Knight as the strongest target to cheat out of the extra deck using Magical Scientist. Although it enjoyed many tournament placements in 2004, usage of Darkblade the Dragon Knight fell dramatically when Magical Scientist was banned in early 2005. But even with this falloff, as a nostalgic favorite, Darkblade the Dragon Knight still found a few odd tournament placements in many years since, primarily in strategies that didn't rely on the extra deck, but still wanted to run the max amount of cards to disguise their strategy. After Syncros debuted in the TCG in August of 2008, usage of Darkblade the Dragon Knight fell off again, as spare extra deck slots became more valuable. Wildly thrashing its way to number 4, we have Chimeratech Rampage Dragon. This level 5 machine's stats might seem kind of low at 2100 attack and 1600 defense, but what if I told you it could attack 3 times while setting up your graveyard and clearing your opponent's back row? It's an important question to think about, because that is what I'm telling you. Chimeratech Rampage Dragon only requires 2 generic Cyber Dragon materials to break out of the extra deck, but you can summon it using even more monsters, and you might want to, because when Chimeratech Rampage Dragon hits the field, it destroys a number of spells and traps without targeting, equal to the number of materials used for its fusion. And once you've swept away your opponent's back row threats, Chimeratech Rampage Dragon can activate its effect to send up to 2 Light Machine monsters from your deck to the graveyard, gaining an extra attack for each card you mill. The potential to inflict 6300 damage is nothing to sneeze at, but the graveyard setup is often even more key to victory. Overload Fusion summons a Dark Machine monster using materials from your field and graveyard, and the combos don't stop there, because Cyberload Fusion can summon a Fusion Machine monster from your extra deck that uses Cyber Dragon as material by shuffling from your hand and banish pile into the deck. Many strategies love to stack the graveyard to fuel explosive extra deck plays, and Chimeratech Rampage Dragon is a strong candidate for a facilitator of these summons. In the TCG, Chimeratech Rampage Dragon saw decent play for a few years after its release, but dwindled over time as the game's power level gradually crept, and as Cyber Dragons became less relevant with the end of Master Rule 4, which we'll discuss a little later on this list. But in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, Chimeratech Rampage Dragon wasn't just a respected boss monster, it was feared. The Future Horizon main box released in Duel Links in New Year's Eve of 2019, and Chimeratech Rampage Dragon has been blasting through life points at a remarkable speed ever since, remaining somewhat viable as a rogue OTK at the time this video was made, well into 2023. In Duel Links, players only have 3 back row slots, allowing Chimeratech Rampage Dragon to clear a much larger portion of the field before setting up the graveyard and attacking for game, since players also have less life points in Duel Links. With games starting at 4,000 life points, Chimeratech Rampage Dragon was more than capable of winning games entirely on its own, and was so good that Cyber Dragons experienced multiple rounds of nerfs, limiting key cards like Cyberload Fusion and watering down Zane Truesdale's Cyber-style skill, which made it way too easy to get this raging game ender on the field. Coming in at number 3, we have Thunder Dragon Colossus. This level 8 Thunder monster can be fusion summoned with Thunder Dragon and any Thunder monster, but it also has a secondary summoning condition where after you've activated a Thunder effect from the hand, you contribute 1 non-fusion Thunder monster. The Thunder Dragon archetype makes extensive use of effects activated from the hand, like Thunder Dragon Dark and Thunder Dragon Hawk, making Thunder Dragon Colossus very accessible. Although it carries a respectable stat line of 2600 attack and 2400 defense, its real strength lies in its absurdly strong Floodgate effect. where cards cannot be added to your opponent's hand from their main deck except by drawing, and it carries destruction protection in the form of banishing a thunder monster from the graveyard. This looks like a dragon released into the TCG at the end of 2018, and saw significant amounts of play in pure Thunder Dragon decks, as well as splashed in with other strategies like Danger, Chaos, and Crusadia on account of its versatility and easy summoning conditions. In fact, it saw so much play that it was banned outright at the start of 2020, and has been ever since. Luckily, Thunder Dragon Colossus still has a home in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, where it's limited to 1 copy per deck, but sees frequent play for all the reasons listed above. Interestingly, this card does exist within Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, but is currently unobtainable to players. In the Tag Duel tournament event when playing against the Dark Side Dimensions version of Seto Kaiba, he can add a copy of Thunder Dragon Colossus to his extra deck using the special event skill Thunder Dragon Colossus Reserve. In the number 2 spot on this list, it's time for Cyberse Clock Dragon. This level 7 Cyberse monster can be summoned by fusing Clock Wyvern and 1 or more Link monsters. Then, you can mill cards equal to the sum of the Link rating of all the monsters used as fusion materials. You can't attack with other monsters until the end of your next turn, but Cyberse Clock Dragon gains 1000 attack for every card you mill. And if you control Link monster, your opponent can't select other monsters as attack or effect targets. And if they do manage to out Cyberse Clock Dragon, you can search any spell from your deck. Being able to search any spell is wildly good, but that's not what earns Cyberse Clock Dragon a spot on this list. Because Clock Dragon's attack gain effect doesn't have a ceiling, you can mill as many cards as you can build Link ratings on your materials. With a big enough fusion summon, you could summon Cyberse Clock Dragon with over 20,000 attack. And this is the big play of the Clock Dragon FTK. A first turn kill that revolves around summoning an insanely strong Cyberse Clock Dragon and then tributing with Catapult Turtle to annihilate your opponent's life points before they ever get a chance to play. Pulling this strategy off requires an absurd amount of summons, but it did surprise everyone when duelist Tristan Pugh landed a top 8 placement at LCS New Zealand in March of 2020 using this strategy. More players didn't get the chance to experiment with this MTK because Destru the Lost Dragon's Frisian, a key card that enabled the strategy, was banned the next month. In the anime, Playmaker used Cyberse Clock Dragon as a late game finisher monster that illustrated the connectivity theme of Link monsters by receiving its attack boost directly from the materials that went into its creation. As a powerful monster with anime appearances and an entire FTK strategy built around it, Cyberse Clock Dragon more than earns number 2 of this list, and might have claimed number 1 if not for another, even stronger monster. And deploying into this list's number 1 spot, we have the level 10 Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon. Like its fellow Chimeratech Rampage Dragon, Megafleet Dragon needs a generic Cyber Dragon monster as a material. That's not bad, but what makes Megafleet the undisputed admiral of not Dragon Dark Fusion are its other materials. Any number of monsters in the extra monster zones. Super Polymerization's extended stay in the TCG ban list in the mid-2010s is a testament to the strength of using your opponent's monsters as fusion materials. But what's better than fusing with polymerization? Fusing without polymerization. Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon is a contact fusion, which means it summons itself from the extra deck by tributing its materials on the field. This menacing monster's original attack and defense become equal to 1200 times the number of materials used for its summon, giving it a respectable potential of 3600 attack if you need to clear your own extra monster zone to summon it, and an okay stat line of 2400 if the other extra monster zone is unoccupied. Decent attack and non-targeting, non-destruction removal as cost are good, but are they number 1 spot on a list good? Yes, because on July 20th, 2017, a starter deck released that changed the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Forever. Starter deck, Link Strike brought with it a set of updates that would become known as Master Rule 4, that marked the end of the Pendulum era and the dawn of the Link summon. The 2 extra monster zones were established, and the Pendulum zones were collapsed into the existing 5 zones for back row. But in an even bigger shakeup to how the game was played, monsters from the extra deck could only be summoned to the extra monster zones, or to a zone that a Link monster's arrow pointed to. This was a severe nerf to the existing extra deck summoning methods, significantly limiting players' ability to fusion, synchro, XYZ, and pendulum summon. It also made Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon's unique ability to turn the occupant of your opponent's precious extra monster zone into a material to bring out a monster into your own incredibly powerful. Add to that the common Cyber Dragon archetype trait of special summoning themselves from the hand when you control no other monsters, and Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon alone could swing a game in your favor. As befitting its versatility and strength, it saw tons of play throughout the entire era of Master Rule 4, only dropping off when a new set of regulations unlocked the main monster zones for Fusion, Synchro, and XYZ monsters. In its heyday, this card was so good that some duelists even chose to run the otherwise somewhat unuseful Toon Cyber Dragon to better their odds of being able to bring Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon onto the field. For its unparalleled impact on the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta for an entire format, Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon takes the number 1 spot. Alright, and that's the list. If you know of any dark fusion monsters with dragon in their name that aren't dragons that I may have missed, because there are actually a few more, or have ideas for future videos just like this one, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments.